I have great concerns about the statements that have been made today. And, before I go into that further, I'd like to contrast what's being said today about people in the Channel with the way that we've responded to the situation of Afghan refugees. I mean, we can see very clearly that Afghans are at risk of persecution from the Taliban. And so there's been this outpouring of compassion from the British public to help them. Again, showing that as a nation, we want to welcome refugees who need safety. Now, those Afghans are coming on relocation or resettlement schemes, and it's just what the Home Office would refer to as a safe and legal route. But we don't have safe and legal routes for many other countries. And so coming across the Channel at the moment, for some people, is the only option that they have. And people in those boats could be fleeing persecution in the same way that Afghans are, and may even include Afghans in the boats.
And Jeremy, you touched on it there, but how do you think this will impact the people who are making these journeys, fleeing very similar situations to what we're seeing in Afghanistan?
People leave their countries because they no longer feel safe to stay there. They're at risk, they flee because they're at risk of losing their lives or being imprisoned. They don't take these decisions lightly. Nobody would. You don't leave your country and start from scratch somewhere else very easily. And people are then looking for a safe place to go. And traditionally, our country has been a country that has offered sanctuary. 70 years ago, we signed up to the UN Convention on Refugees, which recognised that refugees are people who've been persecuted and have a well-founded fear of persecution, and that they need protection. And so we need to look at it as a global picture. We often talk about climate change as being a global challenge. Well, I think that displaced people across the world is also a global challenge. I mean, there are 80 million people who are displaced across the world. That includes about 26 million refugees and 4 million asylum seekers. And we all need to play our part. And actually, Britain plays a small part. If you compare our situation to countries like Turkey and Lebanon, who have taken millions of Syrian refugees, and Iran and Pakistan, who over decades have taken millions of Afghan refugees, the numbers of people coming to Britain are far, far smaller. I mean, we've had a Syrian resettlement program that took 20,000 Syrians. We've recently announced an Afghan resettlement program, which will take another 20,000 Afghan refugees. And when we're looking at the asylum figures, there are 4 million asylum seekers around the world, but last year there were only 29,456 asylum applications in this country. I mean, admittedly, it was a bit lower because of the pandemic, but the previous year, the number was 36,566. So compared to some other countries, we are taking a much smaller proportion of people who are fleeing persecution.
Now, there have been other plans that have been thrown around today. For example, there are reports of Ghana as a country that could potentially process some of these migrants to see if they are eligible to come to the UK. Has this worked in other countries?
Yes, I was recently at a seminar on the next steps for asylum policy in the UK, which was run by the Westminster Legal Policy Forum. And one of the speakers there was from Australia, and she was talking about how they tried to do this offshore processing system where asylum seekers were then taken to another safe third country to be processed there. And she went on to say that it's actually been a policy failure within Australia, when we often hear, politicians alluding to this as being a particular success. But part of the aim in Australia was to stop the arrival of boats and to end trafficking. And statistics showed in the years following that it hadn't done either of those things. And I think the other thing that I was really alarmed by was when they were looking at the mental health impact on people who had been taken to these other countries to be processed. They said that they had some of the highest mental health problems of any population in the world. And there was also a high level of what they called resignation syndrome within children, where their mental health had deteriorated to such a point that they were virtually comatose.
So, how do we strike the balance then between welcoming and showing compassion to people who are fleeing dangerous situations, but also addressing and acknowledging some of the fears and concerns people may have about a crisis on our hands?
I think we need to look at the statistics clearly in terms of numbers and see what our position. If you had a league table, where we are in the world, and to recognise that yes, we are making a difference to some people, and we are playing our part in doing that. But it's part of a global picture, and it's dangerous if we withdraw. Then who else will withdraw? And then people will not be supported, because at the end of the day, the majority of people who flee because of persecution to become refugees only go across a local border. And so it's poorer nations who are supporting 76% of the refugee population around the world. So I think, the balance is that we need to play our part as a global player in a global challenge. And also from a faith perspective, there is a need to offer justice, to offer mercy, to offer compassion, and to offer welcome to people who have left everything behind because their home is no longer safe and need somewhere to rebuild and start from scratch and live in safety and peace, and then contribute to the new community. We benefit as well from people who come to this country. Refugees make a really positive contribution to our communities over time.
And in terms of what that looks like practically, tell us a bit more about what you do at Restore and how we can get involved.
Yes, certainly. I mean, at Restore, our main service is a one-to-one befriending service where we link a local volunteer with a refugee or an asylum seeker. And they're there to combat isolation and loneliness, to offer welcome, to offer friendship, help with conversational English, and to signpost them to other services. And over time, to build up a supportive relationship for them. So that's something that people can do either through an organisation like Restore or just independently. And there are other ways of helping. Lots of organisations run things like English classes for refugees and asylum seekers. And obviously, we work in Birmingham. But if you want to find out information about your own area, I would suggest contacting either the City of Sanctuary Network, which is across the country, or the Welcome Churches Network, which is also across the country. And they can link you in to local projects that you could join and then offer that welcome and that compassion yourself.
Jeremy Thompson, manager at Restore. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you very much.